Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Jason Wright from the History Center. And it's unfortunate for those who aren't seeing the video because you're right in the middle of an exhibit hall in front of a beautiful early motor vehicle. And yeah, the backdrop is fabulous.
Thank you. It actually took quite a miracle to get this car. I'm actually on the second floor of the old Douglas mansion. And this is the Maxon car that was built back in the early 1900s, back when people thought electric cars were kind of cool. Guess what's happening again, 100 years later?
What goes around comes around.
Absolutely. This was actually one of three that were built right there in the old Mott building, which is now a apartment complex down right on the river.
Well, as things kind of inch back towards normalcy, you have started to you've been doing tons and tons of online programming. And now finally, we're going to get to do a few in person things. So you've got a huge and busy schedule coming up in spring and summer. So where do you want to start?
Boy, let's do it chronologically. Coming up right here on May 4th, we have an event that we call Oral Histories Live. Dave Rasdal, I'm hoping that's a name that's going to ring familiar to your listeners, is going to be interviewed. And we do this for a variety of reasons. First of all, these are great stories that need to be told. I mean, this is a guy that had put himself out there to get his articles written. And we do it in front of a live audience. I can't tell you that I've had an authentic or original thought in my head ever, because this was actually based on the formula of inside the actor studio. We get someone in front of the audience, interviewed with a pro, and that would be Rob Klein, and we are able to capture this amazing story. But what's even better is then we transcribe it, and so then people can research it in perpetuity. These are stories that are now primary source material that everybody can learn from.
Dave Rasdal, of course, spent 30 years at the Cedar Rapids Gazette. His Ramblin' with Rasdal columns were required reading for anybody wanting to get to know the personalities of Eastern Iowa. But now people kind of get a chance to get to know him.
Exactly, and how he found himself in that extraordinary position.
And that will be coming up when?
On the 4th of May, and that starts at 6 o'clock. And to make sure that people feel comfortable, we're going to do that one outside. We actually set up little squares out on our lawn so people can still socially isolate. We'll ask people to wear masks, even though we're outside. We want to be very, very, very careful. We want to make sure that all of our patrons, our volunteers, our staff, and our presenters stay safe. So that one will be out on the lawn.
So that's coming up on May 4th. And then you've got another in your continuing series of advanced eulogies. Let's just call it.
Yes, where we get to feature a nearly dearly departed. This also was an idea that had nothing, had no originality to it, except for I was watching an old Dean Martin roast one day, trying to think of what kind of fundraiser the History Center should have, and that was done so tastefully, so funny. And then I remembered that we were moving into, this was back before we had moved into this beautiful, glorious building known as the Douglas Mansion or Turner Mortuary. And I said, what if we threw a funeral for someone that isn't quite dead yet? And so we have been able to feature just amazing people just over the past 4 or 5 years. And Steve Shriver, the unofficial mayor of Newbo, has agreed to be our victim. And we have hired the best comedy writers, Dave Martino and Adam Whitty, and they write the script. And then Steve will be eulogized by a variety of characters. And I understand that Lindsay Prince is going to be one of the eulogists. She'll be portraying roles, as will Christopher Okishi. Gerard Estea was going to be providing the music. We're going to be doing a few musical parodies, and Lacey D'Souza will be the vocalist. It is the funniest funeral you'll ever go to. It is done all in good taste, as much as a fake funeral can be, but in good humor and in a gentle roasting. You'll never laugh so hard at any fundraiser in your life.
And Steve Shriver has had so many different aspects of his personality and business that have been a huge part of the Cedar Rapids area now for a couple of decades. Serial entrepreneur, like you said, people started calling him the mayor of Nubo because of his leadership in that area of town.
Absolutely. Ecolips, he is someone that has summited more peaks in this, I mean, physically, mountain climbing, had more than a few life-threatening situations. He has more stories to tell. And I got to tell you, the pre-planning for this has been so much fun. The writers first got together with Steve, and he got to tell them some stories. But then we do something that is called soon to be X Circle of Friends party, where we invite all of Steve's friends, but he isn't invited. And then we prime the pump with a few adult beverages, and people start throwing him under the bus with all sorts of stories. I got to tell you, I was laughing so hard at these events. I got to tell you, this is going to be arguably the funniest one yet. They're a blast.
And this will be in Steve's one of his newer ventures, the somewhat recently remodeled Olympic Theater. I say recently, I was dealing with something the other day where I said, well, that was just last year. I was like, well, no, it was actually 2019 because 2020 just really didn't exist at all. So it's still the Olympic Southside Theater still feels brand new, even though it's been in place for a while.
And you're absolutely right. And what's really kind of funny is that this event was supposed to be the opening first event when they had first rehabilitated that facility, but we had to postpone it. So we are delighted that we're going to be there. We're again going to socially isolate. The way we're going to set it up is that when someone buys a ticket, they tell us how many people they want to sit with. And so if it's just two, they get a two top, and then we separate that by 6 feet. If it's two couples, we put two tops together. If it's however people want to feel the most comfortable, and we will ask them to wear masks when they're not eating or drinking. And for the pallbearer patrons, and I got to tell you, 70% of the tickets are sold already, and almost every one of them is a pallbearer patron. That allows someone to come at 6 o'clock. They get the most amazing spread of funereal hors d'oeuvres. They're kind of like a funeral fare upscaled. All you can drink beer and wine, starting at 6, as I said, and you get your reserved seats at your table, so you can be very safely put separated. The hors d'oeuvres actually are going to be served. You'll actually go and tell the servers what you want, so that'll keep it safe. And then somewhere around 7:30, the fun begins. Now, we also have another ticket for sale. It's a little less price, and people can come in at 7 and have all you can drink at that point as far as beer and wine, and then still enjoy this amazing, amazing celebration of life.
And that is coming up on May 8th.
Saturday, May 8th.
Tickets still available?
Yes, as I said, we've sold 70% because we've limited it. We've sold 70 at this point. So if you're at all interested in seeing the funniest funeral, the funniest fundraiser you've ever seen, get your tickets now on historycenter.org. They're right at the top of the banner. Click right on that, and you can get your tickets.
So that's going to be what's coming up in May. Now, I know you've got a huge summer plan. So just briefly, because you'll come back and talk again about some of the events as we get closer, but just briefly talk about Museum Week and what you've got coming up in June and July.
Yep, Museum Week actually kicks off on June 8th, and we're going to start out with a walking tour, which is sort of our flagship program. But then the next day, we're going to do something called Chew on This, where people want to bring their lunches, and we're going to have a special lecture here during the lunch hour, and we'll provide the beverage and the dessert. And then on the next day, which was the 10th, we're going to have a young learners camp that's going to be from 10 to noon. And that'll be them exploring history and maybe being history detectives. I think one of the bigger nights is going to be Friday the 11th, where we're going to have a trivia night. It's all going to be Lynn County trivia. And so people can sign up and come in groups and compete for prizes. And then finally on June 12th, we're doing something that I people have been asking us to do forever. People love the notion of a scavenger hunt, but this will be a historical scavenger hunt where we'll start here at the Douglas Mansion, and in groups or individuals will be given clues where they need to go take photos of different historical areas within the downtown Cedar Rapids area, and then come back again for prizes.
Wow, that will be an action-packed week.
It'll be absolutely filled, and we are. I got to tell you, our patrons have been so desperately wanting us to do things, even though when we've been locked down, and they've been so anxious for us to be able to do things in person. We're going to still maintain as much of the social distancing and recommendations as the CDC require and recommend. But we're going to do this all very, very safely, but with just a jam-packed week that week. And then it just continues on with our normal walking tours, some oral histories. And then I'm going to tease the Independence Day weekend is going to be pretty spectacular for the History Center. We weren't able to do our hugely popular New Year's Eve party, so we are going to do a Speakeasy garden party. This will be for 21 and older, and it's going to be a spectacular event, unbelievable entertainment, and exclusive to KCCK listeners. We just signed Elizabeth Von Presley to be the featured act, and she's actually going to do an all 1920s flapper kind of show. I am so excited. She is the most chameleon-like artist that can do so much of every genre and era. She's going to knock it out of the park. So the Smiths actually, John and Diane Smith, very generously have sponsored that.
Not too early to mark your calendar and get advance tickets for the Spirited Lawn Party as well at the first part of July.
Exactly.
Well, come back in a few weeks and let's, kind of run through this again. But in the meantime, it's the Dave Rasdal Oral Histories Live coming up on May 4th. And then on May 6th, or May 8th, sorry, on May 8th, it's Famous Last Words with Steve Shriver.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much for having me on, Dennis. I'm so grateful to you.
Details on these and everything going on at the History Center, and there is a bunch at your website, which is
historycenter.org.
Jason, thanks for joining me today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio most Thursdays and Fridays, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture or using your favorite podcast app. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.